Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Hard Talk HR. My name is Mihai Nagy. My guest today is an exceptional entrepreneur, Tom van der Lubbe, one of the co-founders of Viisi, a very successful mortgage advisor organization. I asked Tom to join me today to talk about what are some of the key successes for Viisi becoming one of the top or best employer or best organization in the Netherlands in their category. What are some of the ideas that made the organization exceptionally successful in hiring and retaining the best people? I also asked Tom to talk about what's required in order to successfully manage short pressures versus long-term organization success. And lastly, what HR should do, should change in order to become a greater source of value in today's crazy turbulent times. So I hope you will enjoy today's episode. And if you do, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. At Hard Talk HR, we bring you fresh ideas and inspiring content from around the world of work. So good morning, Tom. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show. It's such a delight and such a privilege having you here. And the reason why I ask you to join me, because you are one of those really unusual CEOs. I visited your website. I mentioned in my introduction that you are leading Viisi Hypotheken. Your company offers affordable mortgage services. So once I visited your website to get some more insights into your company, it was very unusual. Most organizations use their YouTube channel to create some sort of content which revolves around their service and product, or they use it for straight marketing, but not in your case. Your YouTube channel is full of content about people centricity, about leadership. So why did you decide to dedicate your company's YouTube channel to this noble purpose?
First, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I think it's actually both. So on the website, people who want to have mortgage advice can find a lot of stuff on that topic, which is our business. But around on the YouTube channel, we have a lot of videos. That's correct, and it's about inspiration. And it started very simple by, let's say, putting our own people first in this hierarchy of stakeholders, and we started to invite people also to share their experiences, etc. And then people liked it, and then it became more and more and more and more. So I wouldn't say it was by accident, but we didn't expect it to be so numerous on our channel.
Mm-hmm. Your company has been voted as best employer in Netherlands in 3-4 consecutive years in your category. Can you just share some of the key ideas, some of the pillars why your company is so exceptional when it comes to leading people or having a work culture in your organization?
I actually think we are not exceptional. Just to put this, let's say at the start, we really think that, let's say, most small and medium-sized enterprises, they all put their people first, because that's the only strategy you can have. So you can't just hire and fire all the time. It's just too expensive. It doesn't make sense. It's also not possible because in the environment you're living as a small company, it's not accepted by your environment. So I think the problem is that the whole media is much focused on these big corporations, and they only care about their shareholders. But in the end, I think they are the exception, because in a normal environment, this egoistic way of acting doesn't work in the long term. So what did we do? Very simple. We just put our own people first. So our own advisors or our own employees, and just say to them, okay, you're totally well equipped and well educated to take care of your customers. Do whatever you think is right, which is very simple. And that works. And then the clients are happy. And in the end, let's say it works pretty well, and perhaps also the shareholders are happy. And we always had this starting point of, let's try to change this financial industry. But I wouldn't make it more complicated than it is.
Mm. So it's very similar to the leadership style of Ricardo Semler at Semco, and we also learned about holacracy. Zappos experimented with this. Are these some of these ideas you're also exploring within your company?
Yes, we do a lot. So it's, let's say, we built in the end our own model, but there's a lot of teal of it inside. Holacracy, sociocracy. Holacracy comes from sociocracy. There are principles from the way states are organized. For instance, you called me the CEO. I'm not actually. So we have this rotation principle, which we know from ancient Greek, from Athens, or you still have it in the Swiss government. So every year there's another one who is a chancellor. So I just gave up my role. A colleague of mine is taking care of this. You call it a lead link in holacracy, but it's a rotation principle which normally doesn't exist in holacracy. So it's just taking all different parts together. But I would again say it's probably common sense. So it's the fact that, for instance, this rotation principle is 2,500 years old and was also used in the Roman Senate or in Athens, says something about the fact that it's not so innovative. The questions of power and how much power do you give a one individual at the top of an organization, these questions are as old as history.
You use common sense, but unfortunately, common sense is not very common. what I've experienced. What are some of the? Obviously, we know the advantages of decentralized decision making, and now the sort of the holy grail of corporate agility. Everybody's trying to be more agile, more responsive, especially now in such a disruptive times. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of such a decentralized decision making or holacracy? In your case, what is there anything you could share with us in this regards?
The starting point would just say it's nicer. So for everybody, it's just nicer. So just take one example. If a team has the freedom to hire their own colleagues, it's just nicer for everybody, because people in the team decide together, shall we get this person on the team? Do we like this person? Do we think it will enrich our team? But it's also nicer from a, let's say, classical point of view. Why would you, if you are far away in a vertical structure, be willing to discuss which person they should hire? I mean, you can save an enormous amount of energy and time by just letting go. So, and just leave it to the people. And if they would, let's say, take in a negative way a negative solution, they were responsible for that negative solution, and they will also find a solution to solve it again. It's not, no, this guy from the HR department, he hired somebody for our team. We knew from the start that it was a wrong person, etc., etc. You don't have this whole mess. So why make it complicated when it is so simple?
Interesting. We recently had a conversation, and you mentioned that the keywords we should be using, especially you mentioned large organizations, I kind of disconnect from their people, which is in an SME environment is common sense. In large organization might not happen very often. And you mentioned the keyword we should be talking about, especially where we are still in a pandemic, is solidarity. Why do you feel it's such an important topic? Why should we focus on solidarity more than ever?
Because it's the human center of where everything is about. And the example I always take is if an elderly lady is waiting on one side of the street, everybody feels immediately that you go to this lady and you will help her to cross the street. Why would it be in another environment which is called company different? So it's always about, let's say, thinking about somebody else. It's always about altruism. It's never about egoism. So if we consider egoistic behavior counterproductive and not acceptable, why do we accept this as a leading principle in our companies? Because, for instance, only caring about shareholders and not about your own people. So laying off your own people because of your shareholders is an egoistic approach. Why do we consider egoistic approach when we give it a different name to be something which is positive?
Interesting. But isn't it shareholders? I mean, it's interesting that, we need to be more responsible for a greater society, more responsible for people, and not to satisfy shareholders' need, not focused on them too much. But then isn't it that shareholders dictate? So how do we balance it well, the short-term pressures which corporate executives need to deliver versus the long-term objectives versus in order to leaving a better place for the humanity as a whole that might go against the interest of the shareholders? What's the right way to balance it, and what's the best way to expand that sort of to raise that level of sort of a sense of responsibility and human consciousness?
The long term is always better than the short term, and even if you would frame it in a financial way, companies who try to avoid layoffs in times of crisis, they create a higher shareholder value than if you, in a kind of instinctive reaction, lay off people immediately. I mean, I wrote an article on this on the Corporate Rebels platform, and there are articles on the Harvard Business Review on that, which is, if you think about it, also very normal. If somebody has worked for you 20 years and you have earned profits 20 years, and then you have 3 or 4 months where business is not doing great, then everybody expects solidarity. So you always want to be treated by somebody else the way you would do the other way around. So why would you act differently? It's only because this human connection is not there anymore. It's somebody who's sitting somewhere at a totally different part of the world than telling a CEO that for short-term reasons, not long-term reasons, for short-term reasons, you can stabilize your share price by giving a kind of signal to those short-term oriented shareholders to lay off people. So only the press release, we will lay off 1,000 people, is in this crazy world, has a function to stabilize your share price. But in the long term, and that's what I say, there's enough research done on that, it has a negative effect. But then this shareholder already has sold the shares again.
I fully agree with you. I mean, it's all about ego. It's all about corporate greed that sometimes lead to the wrong decision makings. And it is my hope that the world will eventually change. Maybe I'm naive, but
I even want to say, if you are really greedy in the long term, then it makes sense not to lay off your people. So if you want to maximize your shareholder price, it really makes sense from a financial point of view to act in a human way. If you act in a human way, and if you treat your people well in times of crisis, people stay productive, which is also understandable, because if you fear that you will be laid off, you lose a lot of productivity. But people are also thankful, and there is this kind of collective effort to grow the company further. I mean, if you lay off your people, you know that after the crisis, half a year later, you have to hire them all again. And you have to onboard, you have to find them, you have to onboard them. But also this whole idea that there is no solidarity. Why should people be committed to your cause as a business owner to help you to earn money if the other way around you don't care about your people? That just doesn't work.
Exactly. It's really what I mentioned previously. It connects to the previous question. I'd say it's about the raising the level of human consciousness beyond our sort of physical boundaries of bodies as human beings and the boundaries, imaginary boundaries of our corporations to include the greater society, to include humanity, because we are both fathers of young children, and we are probably okay. But honestly, I'm quite worried about the future of my daughters and the future of my grandchildren and future of my great-grandchildren. Probably I never even meet them. Yeah. But I'm still conscious about making sure that there's the mark I leave behind is something they can be proud of, and the world we leave behind is still something which is livable for them and by them. So the real challenge, and now we are going a little bit philosophical here, is how we caring and solidarity and empathy. It's easy if we expand the boundary of our own consciousness beyond our own physical body to the other person, to the organization, to the greater society, and to the entire humanity. So the real challenge is how to, because shareholders dictate very often to make sure there is sort of quarter to quarter the organization wins.
Yeah.
But how to educate the shareholders that actually it's against your own interest in the long run. It's not just the short term matters, it's the long term that matters most.
Yeah, the problem is that we are living in a kind of mental box, which is so short-term oriented and is also powered by a lot of management books, which are all very short-term oriented. It's very difficult to leave this mental box. So it's more that we should zoom out. And what I find very interesting is that what we used to call primitive cultures, people always had in all those cultures a consciousness about the long term. So in a lot of cultures, there is a kind of law that you have to think 6 generations further or something like that, or you need certain intervals or certain time that nature can recover from something, this kind of stuff. And we think that we are enormously civilized, but perhaps in the end it's exactly the opposite, or at least we should question our own behavior and say, how is it possible that probably 1 or 2 generations in this enormous history we already have is able and also thinks it's their right to ruin this planet and everything which is on this planet with what, let's say, understanding? I mean, how sick are we that we think it's our right to ruin our planet for our children and grandchildren? It's lunatic. It's so absurd. But the people who question this, Greta Thunberg and all those who say, no, little children, they don't understand, and first grow up and first go to school, etc. I mean, that's the absurd kind of theater piece we are all watching.
It is absolutely shocking, especially because we have the illusion of progress, illusion of growth, but we are just revolving around the sun anyway. We just go in circles, and
we even going down. So if you just, I mean, it's not that we, let's say, it's that we're staying on in the same space. No, let's say with the speed we are ruining our planet now. There's not much time left, so that makes it even more absurd. Yes, so if we would, let's say, live all 200 years, perhaps our behavior would be perhaps less egoistic, but the way we act, we should assume we don't care, because when the planet is ruined, we don't live ourselves anymore.
Absolutely, and it's not about saving the planet, because the planet will be okay. The planet was okay before human beings, the Homo sapiens came here. The planet will be okay long after us. It's not about the planet. It's about humanity, and the solidarity that you mentioned is just so critical to be able to expand this thinking beyond the boundaries of organization, just to be nice to each other in order to save humanity in the long run. Let's jump to a bit more practical as a final question, because many of our listeners and those people watching us, they are HR professionals, they are HR practitioners. I hate the term HR, but still, I mean, the profession was branded this way. So they are in charge of the people function in the organization. And their job is to architect the best people practices so that the organization is enabled to succeed at the marketplace and able to become a better corporate citizen. Just they are in charge of value creation through the people function. So if you were to ask to reshape HR as we know it, to be future ready, as the work as we know it will never come back, and the pandemic has changed a lot of things drastically, what would be some of the advice you would give to HR leaders in order to be a true source of value for people in the organization, for the organization itself, and connecting to previous questions to the greater society, to greater humanity?
Okay, 2 things. I think on the one hand, in daily life, it always makes sense to put yourself in the situation of the person you're dealing with. This golden rule principle, treat other people like you wanted to be treated yourself. And that can be very practical. For instance, in our process of applications, we tell people in advance what they will earn in our organization, because an employer is much more powerful than the applicant. And the second thing is that what we touched on before is to decentralize stuff. So the more you decentralize stuff, the more also to take the HR role, you can be much more a coach, and the normal processes can be done much more efficiently in the teams themselves. And it's also much nicer. It's much nicer to walk around all day and ask, what can I do for you? Can I help you? Can I support you? It's much nicer than doing all this administration stuff and telling teams, I hired this guy, or we wrote this piece of text to put online, etc. And let the people do them themselves. Makes also your own life much nicer and much more rewarding. So go for the I would say for the more human way of dealing with this whole idea of HR.
Brilliant advice. Cut through the bureaucracy, cut through the red tape. Let machines do it. Now digital and machine is here to help organizations and help HR to free up time from these administrative tasks to become more people-centric and really just stay humane and expand solidarity across the organization and even beyond that, to have a greater impact, greater value creation in the long run. Tom, thanks so much for joining me this morning. You are on the LinkedIn, so if people would like to get in touch with you to get further information, what is the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, everybody can contact me. I will always accept. And all the stuff about us, everything is shared on the internet, so there is no secrecy. So you can always Google my name or the name of the company, Viisi, together with, doesn't matter what term, and you will always find articles or videos or etc. SlideShare, everything is transparently accessible.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.